a look right now. You can see an aircraft going over the sky. That is into Gaza, where our next interview brings us. Our next guest, Mansour Shouman. He's a Gaza resident who's been on the ground the entire time, sharing with us the latest on the scene as we continue to follow this ongoing conflict and those battles that continue to play out in Gaza. Good afternoon there to you in the Gaza Strip, Mansour. He's live in Khan Yunis, where he's been really pretty much the whole time. He's kind of shifted his role from really a civilian to becoming more of a citizen journalist there, sharing with news outlets really across the country, across the world, what is happening on the ground. Thanks for joining us, Mansour.
Thank you, Giacomo. And Merry Christmas to you and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy holidays to you as well, and to your family. I know you have several children, your wife there still on the ground. It is a desperate situation from what we understand in the Gaza Strip. I'm hoping you can share with us really what the latest has looked like in terms of IDF operations as they continue to push into Khan Yunis. And what does it look like in terms of the people that were in Gaza and now starting to shift further to that very crowded south near Rafah?
Yes, so the landscape has changed since we last talked. I think we last had a conversation before the first ceasefire was announced. And at that time, the IDF was focused in their land invasion military operations on the north, in addition to casually bombing the southern areas. At that time, 47% of the casualties were in the south, even though it was a designated safe area for civilians here in Gaza. However, after the ceasefire ended, the south became the focus of the IDF, in addition to the middle region, while withdrawing the troops from the north, from Gaza City. Right now, I am still in Nasser Hospital here in Khan Yunis. I've been here for 75 days. Like you rightly said, my focus has now shifted towards being more of a citizen journalist, trying to talk to different news outlets like yourself across the world, telling them in English what I think is happening on the ground to 2.3 million displaced Palestinian civilians right now. Most of them right now are in the south. Around 1 million are in Rafah, and around 700,000 are in Khan Yunis or in Nasser Hospital and vicinities. So every day we see ambulances coming back and forth. Airstrikes do not stop. Spy drones keep buzzing above us. Honestly, just keep bothering us and not allowing us to sleep. I mean, right now, people are like, whenever you ask them what do you think is going to happen or what is happening or what's your message to the outside world, people feel that with over 25,000 dead and around 60,000 injured, thousands that are under the rubble, they feel that just complaining about what's happening is not useful anymore. So they're more focused on staying alive, staying steadfast, staying resilient, versus what is happening right now, because it seems that the outside world doesn't care, except if if you are strong, if you are resilient, if you are confident, if you are doing the right thing. So I think that's what most people are trying to do. They're just trying to survive. They're trying to remain strong, in addition to trying not to repeat what happened to our ancestors in 1948 and 1967, when they were forced from their homelands in many cities and areas in what is now called Israel, and forced to be refugees in Gaza, in West Bank, in Jerusalem, in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, and in many countries around the world.
Do you have great concern now as more and more people continue getting pushed to the south, at least in the Gaza Strip, much of the north not even occupied anymore, though there are still some refugees that remain there, some Palestinians. But as the IDF continues its operations, it appears that the strip of land, the pieces and the homes that people were in are starting to get moved out. Is there a concern that they won't be allowed back in?
So right now, the logistics is not possible between the middle region and the northern region. The IDF controls both main highways on the sea and on Salahuddin Road on the east. So aid is not allowed to reach our brothers and sisters that are there in the north. We have around 500 to 600,000 people still living in Gaza City, still living in Jabalia, Beit Lahia, and Beit Hanun. There is a lot of concern regarding the lack of aid that is supposed to reach them. Relatively speaking, the middle and southern regions are better, but still, aid is only trickling in. It's like I said before, honestly, the Rafah border is not really open. Aid is only trickling in. Not everything we need is allowed to come in. The quantities is around 2 to 3% of the actual needs. And most of it is still in the UN warehouses waiting to be distributed to civilians that are in need in over 200 refugee schools, many hospitals, mosques, churches, and open land areas all around Gaza, in what I think is the biggest humanitarian crisis right now of the 21st century. Giacomo, I know that it's rough and it's tough to talk about this, but one of the things that keeps stuck in the back of our minds is how we see the many civilians that the IDF army took, especially in the north, especially around Gaza City, and humiliated them and took their clothes off and took them to unknown areas. Many of them reportedly killed, many of them reportedly now injured. I personally met and seen many of them here in Nasser Hospital coming to us from the north, telling us the horror stories that they faced there by the IDF soldiers themselves. We hope as soon as possible for this war to end, a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire to happen as soon as possible, borders to open, aid to come in, and hopefully a peaceful resolution as soon as possible for both sides so that this humanitarian crisis does not continue any more longer.
Now, our understanding, though, is that Hamas has rejected any sort of ceasefire that would end with the end of Hamas ruling Gaza. There's been conversations about the Palestinian Authority potentially taking over Gaza once Israel finishes its war, its operations in the Strip, but no clear sign of what exactly will happen next. Is there a common consensus among the people living in Gaza right now, such as yourself, on what you think should happen? Is there a want for what is to come next?
I think the most important thing here is that they don't want a temporary ceasefire. They want a permanent ceasefire. The people here want a permanent ceasefire. We already went through the experience of a temporary ceasefire, and we saw the aftermath is even more vicious from the IDF against the civilian population here. That's why I think the push is towards a permanent ceasefire solution, and that I think is the focus by the negotiation parties led by Egypt and Qatar, trying to bring both sides closer in terms of what should be agreed upon. I think the number one thing asked by everyone is a permanent ceasefire and not a temporary one. People want to go back to their homes. People want to go and see their relatives, want to meet their loved ones. Even if they live temporarily on a tent in their land, they'll feel they are home. But having a temporary ceasefire, having a temporary ceasefire shows that there's uncertainty. Not sure if we are going to stay living in a place like Nasser Hospital or we can go back home. I think the number one thing is a permanent ceasefire. This is what needs to happen as soon as possible.
Meanwhile, Mansour, we know that limited aid is being allowed through the Rafah border, of course, after it's been checked by Israeli Defense Forces. Our understanding, it's taking time for that to happen. What is being allowed through? What isn't being allowed through? And can you say from folks on the ground, what is the greatest need at this point?
I'm not sure what is not being allowed through. But what we are seeing now in the markets, what we are seeing at the UN warehouses, what we are seeing at some of the local traders who we are able to buy in bulk from when it comes to charity work, is a lot of different canned food. There is some cattle that is being allowed in, so cow, sheep, turkey, chicken. There are some clothes, blankets, things to keep warm. There has been a field hospital that has been set up here. We have seen a couple of trucks, a couple of fuel trucks come in order to ensure that electricity doesn't stop running. I think the most important thing is the continuation of the arrival of fuel trucks, because without fuel, there is no electricity. And without electricity, a lot of the vital support needed to run different operations here in Gaza will not be available anymore, especially communications. Several times we had a lot of communication outages because the local stations providers here have run out of fuel. Many times the hospital we are in, Nasser Hospital, that is the main hospital now providing services to the community here, came close to shutting off, except for the solar panels that kept it running and the vapors of fuel that were left in order to keep it running. So fuel is the most important thing. We have seen more food, more clothes come in over the last few days. But like I said, I think it's not enough for even 2 to 3% of the actual needs of the population here. And we are not sure what is the situation in the north. We need to ensure that this aid reaches the population in the north. We have 500,000 people still waiting for aid.
And we do know that the United Nations recently in a report said that Gazans are perhaps the hungriest people in the world at this point, and that is likely true, given that ongoing necessity for aid and a lot not getting through as well. Mansour, I saw some images on your Facebook page where you had posted as a part of a give out for baby formula, which I imagine is something greatly needed at this point. Tell me about that type of event and some of the other, I suppose, humanitarian efforts happening on the ground from volunteers within Gaza or other aid organizations working within the Strip to help people who are suffering right now.
Yeah, after making over 80 different live and recorded appearances on international TV stations, and having also very active social media platform accounts trying to get the message across to the world about what's happening here, I got a lot of people asking me, Mansour, how can we ensure that we can donate and our funds reach the displaced civilians here in Gaza? So in the beginning, I was referring to the different organizations, but it was obvious that the aid was stuck behind the Rafah border, wasn't able to come in. So we found ways in order to ensure that these funds reach directly the people in need here in Gaza. And we are able to have a lot of different campaigns, similar to the one you talked about, for example, the milk products formulas, where we buy in bulk hundreds of different milk containers, and we distribute it based on prepared lists sent to us by hospitals or by refugee centers or families in need who have babies who cannot afford these milk formulas, who cannot breastfeed, and we distributed it together with volunteers who are dedicated to such tasks. So yeah, a big shout out to the free people of the world that want to ensure that the displaced civilian population here in Gaza are not alone and are supported by all means. Thank you very much for that.
And I'm sure it's much needed, but so many people, I'm sure, thankful and willing to help given the ongoing situation. Meanwhile, the Israeli Defense Forces, they continue their efforts on the ground. What does it look like in Khan Yunis? Is there active fighting? Is there continued explosions? Is it all of the above?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. The Israeli tanks have come as close as 300 meters to Nasser Hospital. We keep getting messages on our phones, emergency messages that the zones, the areas adjacent to Nasser Hospital are now war zones and that we need to leave it as soon as possible. Some people have left, but the majority have decided to stay, saying there is no place safe for them to go to. And the place they know is better than the place that they don't know. Again, we are in a hospital and we also have a morgue. So every day we see scenes of death. a lot of innocent elderly women and children being killed, being maimed, lots of amputations happen. But in addition to that, there's also a source of life. I mean, beside me here is the maternity ward, which was also bombed 2 weeks ago, killing a female patient and injuring many babies and women. But lots of life, new life comes. And every day, we are seeing new children, new babies come to life. So that gives us a source of hope to the future. And hopefully that the new generation will live a better life than the generation that currently exists here in Gaza, a life full of prosperity, peace, and love, and freedom, not only here in Palestine and in Gaza, but for the world at large.
Now, you've remained in Khan Yunis the whole time there in southern Gaza as this offensive has gone on for more than 80 days now. Fighting, rocket fire, so much happening there. Is there a point that you've decided with your family that you would decide to flee further south, maybe into Rafah, in attempts for to get to security?
I'll be honest with you. I know three close friend families who left Khan Yunis to Rafah, and all three families got bombed, either directly or indirectly. Many we've lost in totality. Some of them, their children, they lost one of their children. Another one, the wife lost her eye and lost one of her legs. So unfortunately, there is no safe place, neither in Rafah, neither in Khan Yunis, neither in Deir al-Balah, Gaza City, or the north. There is no place safe here in Gaza Strip. That's the reality of the situation. And being in a place that we know, with friends, with family, with connections, with the ability to get food and water, communications is better for us than going to the unknown and being also unsafe there. So, no, I think we're deciding to stay where we are right now and hoping for the best.
Mansour Shouman there in the Gaza Strip, a resident. He's also a Canadian citizen and a Palestinian who's remained in Gaza for more than 80 days since that war with Hamas began, as Israeli forces now continue to operate in the area surrounding his home. Mansour, we wish you and your family safety as you head into the new year as well. We wish and send many prayers to everybody in the region right now that continues to suffer. Mansour, anything we haven't asked you, anything you'd like to add?
No, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the audience for listening and for hearing both sides of the story. And I wish you a really happy new year and a Merry Christmas. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. Mansour Shouman there joining us from the Gaza Strip today.